All right, it's Bruno with MB, and my guest here is Srecko Zizakovic, and ZMB. We're going to have a little bit of fun because you're going to kind of get into my area a little bit about hiring, but because that's what I used to do for a long, long time. But what's more important about what you're going to talk about is specifically a couple of things that you look for when you're hiring peak performing salespeople, when you're the sales manager or VP of sales or whatever. Number one.
At the end of the day, I remember this on a recruiting trip that we took to one of the universities when I was working with one of the oil and gas companies. And I asked the recruiter, I said, well, what do you want me to be looking for, right? I'm hiring for a big company that's 35, 40,000 people globally. And he said, think of it this way, simplest way, could you work next to this person for 2 weeks in a row? And so I think personality, being able to fit in with a culture, understanding the goal of your company when you're hiring, understanding that you need somebody that fits in. Once again, we've used these huge analogies and many of them with respect to team. So can this guy be a team player, be not a team player? So to go back to a bit of a sports reference, like how many great teams do you see where teams make trades? I don't care what the sport is. You make a trade, oh, we're going to get this big name in here, and he doesn't work out. Well, why not? He's a superstar. Because he just doesn't fit in, right? And you see it in sports every year, maybe some different sports, but you'll see where people they want to buy the name, but the person doesn't fit, right? So I think number one is you've got to have a personality that, one, is going to represent your company very, very well, that's going to be technically sound, that's going to be able to fit in with the culture of your company, and represent you well in the marketplace. I think those three are the top three things in my mind for, if I had to look at and say, what would it take to hire somebody? What would I look at? I'd say probably those three things would be top of my list. Absolutely.
The one thing that we know a few of the same people kind of thing in the industry, not in this city or province in Canada. And the one thing that comes out every time I talk about you or, your name is brought up, hey, you must know Z, is that your competitive drive. And I think that part of the hiring process, I know you've held some really interestingly important positions in sales. They always compare sports to business, and very few people can actually live up to that. Let me explain to you. So one of my incredible collaborators is Miranda, and we spoke about this in one of our videos that we were interviewed. And we're talking about people say business is like sports, and we both agree to disagree with that because most people don't understand what it takes to be a top level salesperson. Because in sports, their model is top management is looking for the best available player, period. They don't even consult with middle management. So, if who's a great football player right now? Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
If he becomes available, do you think they're going to go talk to the bookkeeper or the CFOs like, hey, kid Mahomes is available? Yeah. They're just gonna sign him.
Well, you're gonna be like Jimmy Jones, right? Right. And just go, I want that guy, right? And just bang, he's a Dallas Cowboy, right?
And you better work with that sales manager, that head coach or that offensive coordinator. And I think that that's what Miranda and I were poking around is that in business we kind of think that we can kind of coast. It's a fallacy. And ever since I've known you in business, because you were retired. And you're in football and you're playing, you play with that certain edge that knows that at any given time, anybody can get cut. And you have to be at the top of your game because there's two other people pushing you every year, top performers. How do you feel about, you work with an edge, you played with an edge. What do you say to people that think, you know what, I got job security? Long question, but I had to throw that out in the context.
Oh, wow. In the world of pro sports, I'll bring you to a story. So when I was working with a service provider in the oil and gas industry, and we had some rather seasoned gentlemen with gray hair who, thought that me coming from an industry that wasn't oil and gas, oh my God, I've been through my first year and my first real winter, right, the active season, and it's busy, it's this, that, and the other, and they thought, what do I know, and this, that, and the other, and how's he going to help us, and lots of questions, because I didn't, I was lucky if I drove by a drilling rig, you know what I mean, in the middle of the night, and these guys grew up on rigs, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the reality was, I said, sales is sales is sales. I'm selling something different. I mean, I'm gonna have to learn a different industry, some lingo, some technical stuff. It'll be a little bit different, but sales, the philosophy is still the same, in my opinion. And I remember the one guy said, "Hey, pretty busy year, huh? Geez, it ain't like selling furniture, right?" And although SMED wasn't furniture, just furniture anyway. But I said, "Yeah, no, it's easier." And he looked at me like I punched him right in the face. "How dare you say that?" was kind of the look on his face, right? "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I was, managing, anywhere between $5 to $12 million projects, 2 or 3 or 4 of them a year when I was working with that organization, much bigger ticket, right, than maybe necessarily what we were doing with the service company." But he couldn't handle that. And I said, here's what look where I come from. I come from the world of professional sports guys. I've seen guys that have made 1 or 2 mistakes or had 1 bad game that never played in the league again. They were cut and they were done. It wasn't that they were cut from this team and somebody else picked them up. They were done. And it's cutthroat. Like, let's face it, right? I mean, you show up one day, walk out of the shower, you walk to your locker room, and you look, and there's the little pink slip. It says, "Go see Wally," right? "Bring your playbook." Oh crap! I'm done. There's no severance. That's the other thing too, right? Like lots of people in the business world, there's no severance in the professional world of sports. You're done. Thanks, right? And you're lucky if you get a handshake, right? I was fortunate enough that, because of the respect I had for the organization and vice versa, I think they let me have a news conference, right? To just to thank the people of Calgary and those people that were really instrumental in my success and making me feel at home as a guy from Ontario out in Alberta, right? And it was good enough where this has been home for 31 years, right? So, but the reality is it is cold. And it is heartless, and it is, go see Jane, she's going to get you a plane ticket home. And and you just go, okay, that's cold.
Yeah.
But it's they don't have the time or the money to spend to go, well, he'll turn it around. Well, he'll turn it around because I might be able to find another DB somewhere, like in a heartbeat, right? There's thousands of them in the United States looking for a job or the opportunity to just say, hey, I'm playing pro football, right? And so for me, it was always. And then you'd have those NFL cuts, right, in August that would, teams would want to take a look at. And the Stamps were no different. They would bring up guys.
Sure.
And I'll never forget, Kent Warnock and I were just on the phone the other day. And we mentioned one of these gentlemen. I won't mention his name. But he was a 2nd-round draft pick, New Orleans Saints. And he comes up and, you read the bio before he shows up. And you're like, oh, geez, he's an interior lineman, right? And Kent and I were both interior linemen. And how good is this guy, man? He's a 2nd-round draft pick, but you were always on your game. Like you had to know the playbook. You had to know who was doing what, and having a coach like Tom Higgins just helped us really understand everything. When a defensive call was made in the huddle, the entire D-line knew what the linebackers were going to do, knew what the defensive backs were going to do, knew what the adjustments were going to be. Like, we were educated in football. We knew. And on top of that, we played our butts off. There was no plays off. There was no plays off. Are you kidding me?
So how would you...
If I get kicked out?
And I knew that was going to be kind of your answer, is that you play with an edge, even in sales. And what do you say to people that want to come in, especially with the big correction worldwide on high-level jobs and whatever you want to call it? What do you say to people that come over and say, you know what, I need a job? I'm really good. I was really good. And you come in, and I don't want to paint the wrong picture of Srecko professionally. I'm just saying, but you do have that win-win-win mentality. Be prepared, come in, be strong, compete
Yeah.
you know, every inch of the way for the sale. What do you say to people, and how do you figure it out, I guess, if they're not there to compete and they're just, calling it in a little bit?
Well, I think you get a sense of it through conversations. You get a sense of it through people that you talk to when you check on references and things of that nature, right? I mean, let's face it, the oil and gas industry in Calgary, as big as it is, it's pretty small, right? So you can quickly check up on lots of different people and say, hey, this guy worked at this company. Hey, do you remember this guy? Yeah. What do you think of him? Is good, bad, ugly? What do you think? Like, just give me the down and dirty. What are your thoughts? But I'll never sit there and go, well, just based on his comments, I'm making a life decision for this gentleman or this lady. But you call around, and you'll call around customers and go, hey, did you ever have this person call on you before? Like, what did you think? Right? Oh, they're awesome. I felt so bad when they lost their job. They're good at this. What are they good at? Bang, 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 bang. Right? And so now I have customers that I have a relationship with that'll validate and say, hey, like, I'd buy something from this person, and here's why, right? And you're like, oh, okay. You jot your notes, right? And I think, nowadays you have to do your due diligence, and you have to check, and you have to just be on point, right? Because it's about as tough as it's ever been, with such a functional shift in how sales is happening, right? And yet, the advent of the internet and all the tools that it brings, and now Zoom and all of the B2B avenues that companies can take. How does your sales force fit in with all of that? You know what I mean? And how can they take advantage of that? Who can train them on all this stuff? Who can tell them, hey, you know what? You can make some sales just by using Zoom properly and get the right people at the table. How do you do it? Right? How do you coordinate it? How do you have a professional background? Right? Versus some people who don't think twice about their background.
Hire a good production guy like Bambino.
There you go.
That's what you do. Because guys like us, we just talk at the bus stop.
So I think there's lots of new and constantly reinventing and thinking of different ways. Like you just have to. Right. I don't think there's a way around it. There's no, like, we're not talking about, Mad Men, right? 50s advertising. We do this, and then we do this, and then we do that. Those days are gone, long, long gone, right? And that's where the youth of today have advancements in technology and understanding the internet and understanding how their generation thinks, eats, and breathes communication, right? And younger and younger workforce out there doing the buying and doing the purchasing. How do I get a hold of that person? How do I develop that relationship with somebody who might be 10, 15, 20 years younger than me, right? And thankfully, I've been able to see some really great examples with the people that I've worked with, and but also I get it with my coaching. Right? Like, I still coach hockey. I love coaching hockey. But the ability to talk to kids that are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, that are starting to become adults, and, meeting them on their platform, right? Doing stuff online. Like, this whole COVID thing forced our team to go, well, what are we going to do? Are we just going to do nothing and cross our fingers and hope that COVID goes away and we get back on the ice?
Yeah.
No. So we said, well, would you guys want to do some online instructional stuff on specialty teams, power plays, penalty kills, breakouts, right? Things that are critical to a hockey team, because those are the game differentiators, really. You look in the NHL, those three things will usually define who wins a game and who doesn't win a game. Right, so we did a lot of instructional stuff online, and we had lots of participation. That was the other thing that really grabbed my attention, was there's lots of these 15, 16, 17-year-olds that were engaged, and you're like going, you know what? Maybe we're on the right place with them, right? And then being able to do physical fitness, right? And I came up with a physical fitness plan that every Tuesday and Thursday we'd go online and we'd meet for 45 minutes of a workout. You didn't have to have weights, nothing special, just stuff in your house, right? And we would work where gravity was the resistance, right? And we would work on things that would get and keep our muscles explosive and strong, and we'd still be flexible. And I'd talk about why we do certain exercises, this, that, and the other, and here's how it applies to hockey, right? And then we get into theory, essentially, for the next 45 minutes. And, you know, and ultimately at the end of the season here, although we didn't get to play hockey, we have a spring development league going on right now, but it's very, very minimal thanks to COVID. But some of these kids that are going on as third years, like when you talk to a kid and you go, what are your plans? When you get a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old that says, you know, I'm going to join the Army because my grandfather was in the armed forces, and it's something I want to do. I'm proud of what he did. And you go, wow, that kid wants to go and fight for freedom and liberty and everything that's supposed to be right about living in a great country like Canada. Wow, I think we might have been part of helping raise a really good kid. You know, kid wants to get into pre-med, another kid wants to be a lawyer, another kid wants to be an engineer, and you're like, well, these are committed trades and the professions that they want to get into. And then you realize, A, they had great parents. B, they had great coaches that helped subsidize parenthood on the ice with a fun game, right? With an exercise, with an immediate goal. In 60 minutes, you know whether you were successful or not, right? That's the beauty of sports. In 60 minutes, you either won or you're lost, right? And outside of soccer, where you can get a draw, I guess. But and I hate draws anyway, and ties. But very quickly, a kid can find out. Was I successful? Was I not successful? Was I part of a successful team today against that team or not? Right? And so I look at all of those impacts and go, you know what? You probably have some pretty good teachers in school too that influence these kids, right? So it's all a matter of, you know, how do we all reach out to these people? Because ultimately, like I say, some of these kids might be pushing me around in a wheelchair one day, and they're going to be the leaders of this country and other countries maybe, and be captains of industry. I'd like to think that I had a positive influence on some of these kids, right? And that's my passion for coaching, is because I think sports, if it's done the right way, and go back to your comment about a negative coach before that we talked about, right? Does he have the right to say that? I would say no. Your job is to be positive, because you either win or you learn. But you should never sit there and destroy a kid's dreams. Right? Now you can tell them to be maybe a little bit more realistic, right? Like, you're not going to make the NHL or you're not going to make the NFL because of maybe some certain things, but you can do lots of other good things, right? And lots of guys who don't make those become great coaches, right? And so there's still ways to be involved with sports, and I think that's the key in my mind. How do I get to these young kids, right? And younger workforce that's showing up, right? And I got to meet them on their terms, basically, right?
So one of the things that, you know, going back to the sales part, is the competitiveness you're talking about. You're talking about realistic. There's no realism in competing. Like, you don't have to say, you know, it's not realistic for you to compete. That makes no sense in sales. You know, it makes no sense in sports either. Because you may fail your goal of winning the Olympics, but nobody can stop you from competing.
Eddie the Eagle.
Of getting, right?
Eddie the Eagle. Eddie? Yeah. Like, what a great story.
And you cannot burn the fire out of somebody's motivation. And I bring that up because, you know, I'm a humongous Yankees fan, because I just, you know, that was my escape as a kid. And I always think about what you're talking about is the sales personnel that you're training, coaching, mentoring, encouraging, and all that kind of stuff. No different than sports, right? Is you have, I call them the pretty boys. The pretty boys, like you were mentioning about the ones that, it's, you know, this is pretty tough. It ain't like selling furniture. Okay. Well, at the end of the day, there are the kids that, they used to say this in baseball, that he's got a good chin. He looks good, you know, and then there are the ones that really win the game for you. And being a New York Yankee fan, I always think of a player called Roy White. I don't know if you remember Roy White. Of course you don't, because
I wasn't a Yankees fan.
you weren't a Yankees fan. But if
I
I
used to
bring
work
up
at CNE, man. I was a Blue Jays fan.
But if I bring up, well, he
Lifelong.
played there. The reason why I bring him up is because I always tell my kids about Roy White, because you remember Reggie Jackson.
I've seen Reggie play live.
And Reggie Jackson, and you remember, Lou Piniella, and you remember all these popular baseball players that were actually really good. But Roy White, he played cleanup behind Mickey Mantle. So he hit 4. And then he hit 4 behind Reggie Jackson. And my point is, if you look at his stats, he actually helped win the 1978 World Series, because the guy was incredible, but he wasn't as popular as the popular guys that kind of dropped the ball when it was really, really, really interesting. And that's one of the things that I always talk about competing in sales, is you get some of the people that think it's just transactional, but then you look at the real records of people that bring in the sales. They're the hustlers. They work their butts off, and they kind of go unnoticed because they're not flashy. And they follow a certain process. And I know that I bring that up only from a point of view is that I know where you started off in sales, and you were like, okay, I guess we'll do sales. You're working at Swimco back in the day.
Winterco, yeah.
I'm sorry, Winterco.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, you knew nothing about oil and gas, and then you knew nothing about this, and you knew nothing about that. But wherever you ended up, you topped up. And I think it's that element of compete.
Well, in every job interview I've ever had, and this is the truth, I tell my kids all the time, you want to win a job interview, you have to be able to convey to the person interviewing you or people interviewing you that you are committed to learning every day. Every day. Because there's no finish line in knowledge, right? It's a constant, it's a long distance race, my friend, right? And every day you're learning something new, right? Sometimes it's only about that big. Some days they're big lessons, and sometimes they're great lessons, and sometimes they're, I made a mistake, but you learn something, right? So you're always learning, you're always pushing to find out more, to look for more, to think out of the box, to think a little bit differently. And I think that's, for me, has always been the key, is if you are just happy with what you did yesterday and you're not learning on how to get better, smarter, faster, bigger, faster, stronger, right? That mentality, then you're losing out to somebody who does have that mentality, who's right behind you, right? And if you don't pay attention to who's right behind you in a race, right? Lots of times you can lose the race right at the very end, right?
Right.
And so it's that mentality of always work to push to find something else out. Is it about my customer? Is it about me? Is it about my family? Is it about my boss? Is it about my company? Is it about a tool that we just came up with, right? That kind of stuff.
Okay, ready? Rapid fire.
Oh, crap. Okay.
Where were you on the night? I know. So just going to ask you a couple of questions. Favorite food?
Oh, lasagna.
Really? Yeah. Serbian boy like that, lasagna.
Don't get me wrong.
Not on.
Nothing wrong with a good steak and potatoes, or spit roasted pork or spit roasted lamb.
You said it, lasagna.
Trust me, but lasagna, because I can make that more often than I can
the other stuff.
Put a pig on a spit.
You got to catch that pig. It's got time. Number 2.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite band?
Oh, easy. Led Zeppelin.
Really?
Love Led Zeppelin.
Did they have an accordion in there?
No, but he did have a bow.
Oh, right.
Jimmy Page, right? They were pretty innovative, right?
Favorite song?
Ramble On.
Okay.
By Led Zeppelin.
Favorite movie?
You know what? There's lots of good ones. I would have to say, depending on why would be my favorite, I've always liked Last of the Mohicans. I liked the original Blade Runner. I liked, and more recently, Remember the Titans.
Okay, yeah.
All the right moves. Like there was a movie there that with Tom Cruise. It was one of his first movies, but it was at the same time that I was getting recruited out of high school. So here was a movie with Tom Cruise that was really running almost a parallel to me, right? Now, mind you, that was in Steeltown, Pennsylvania, and I was in Weston, Ontario. but the same struggles, right? Like, am I good enough? Are they going to look at me? And
Right.
and what about relationships with a girlfriend in high school? Am I going to leave her? So that was a movie that really hit home with me at that time.
But you're a little taller than Tom Cruise, I think.
I
think you're like 3
so.
feet taller than he is. Okay, favorite actor.
Oh, favorite actor. You know what? Oh, I like Harrison Ford.
Okay. Favorite place you like to visit that you visited?
That I've visited. Yep. Oh, geez. Well, football's taken me a lot of different spots. I would say probably the Adriatic coast.
Okay.
When I was a teenager, I went back and visited my relatives with my brother by myself. So I turned 16 that summer, and my parents scrounged up enough money to send us over. And
nice.
And just
did you get the extra leg room with your brother and the plates, or what?
No, we weren't this height back then when we were 16. So.
Okay, favorite meal at Spalumbo's?
Oh, Genoa.
Really?
Genoa sandwich, man.
You strike me as a meatloaf guy.
Nope, Genoa sandwich.
Wow, what a great place.
I had one today. I was there today.
No kidding.
Yep, awesome. Got the little rice balls. Absolutely. I would highly recommend
Tony's amazing.
Anybody. Well, that whole crew's amazing. They hire amazing people.
Yeah, you're right, Tom.
And when you talk about
Mike.
Business relationships and those guys, like I've told lots of people, I said, that I brought in, they've never been to Spalumbo's, and I'll tell them a little bit about it, and I'll say, you know what, that's Tony over there. Just watch him.
Yeah.
And man, the thing that he does the best is he treats, like when he comes over, he's like, hey, Bruno, the handshake and the hug, and how are you doing? How are the kids? How's the family? Blah, blah, blah. You know what? He's like that with everybody that he knows.
He knows everybody. He knows everybody's kids. And
it's not about, I played with Tony. I showered with Tony, but he treats
Hold on a second. It's not this kind of show here.
No, it's football showers, right? But all those guys, right? Like
Christmas and Easter, you guys shower.
They get your mind out of there, man. You're a bad dude, man.
Okay, here's the time of the show that you get to ask me a question if you want to, but any question.
Okay, how famous is your son going to be in the movie industry?
Ooh, Dominic, yeah, he's pretty scary. Very proud of him. The movie thing is pretty interesting. Thanks for asking that, because you got me on a little cameo thing. I had to beg him and pay him for that one.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, because actually you're one of the very few that actually remember him as a really small little kid, because your daughter and him, remember, used to go to the park once in a blue moon, and he was always a very quiet kid. No, I'm very, very, very proud of both my boys. Dominic right now is, he's older, and it goes back to, thanks for asking that question. It goes back to a lot of things that you talked about and what we tried to instill in him. And it's not my decision for him to describe him as good or bad kid. I don't know what that means anymore, but boy, is he committed. I have not met too many kids that are that committed. Now he hits the ball, he enjoys baseball, and he had a good little run in terms of prospect camps, and made a pretty good team down in the U.S. Couldn't get across because of the condition right now. My God, is he committed? I got to tell you, I rarely met a kid that's as committed to the trade as he is, and I'll keep you posted.
That's awesome. And and it comes back to a simple philosophy that I have, and I share with my kids relentlessly. I've shared with the kids that I coached, and it's that the recipe for success, I always say, is simple, right? Find out what you like, find out what your passion is, find out what you're good at, put the three together, and then commit and get after it, right? That's the easy part. The hard part is the discipline to get up and work at it when you don't feel like it, or I'm a little bit under the weather, or my buddies are calling me to go do something else, right? It's the discipline to execute on a regular basis when you don't feel like it, or away from it, right? But the recipe for success is really simple, right? It's the ability to stick to it. That's really the the driving force behind success, right? So
Yeah.
I wish him a lot of success.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I'm saying this because Arden is our production fellow here, and I put him in the same boat as Arden. I've rarely met young people that work as hard, and I mean this to Arden too. They're so committed to getting better every single minute of every single day. It's almost maddening to see on how good they are and how good they're going to be. But I'm going to throw something out. We talked about our older kids a couple times, but our younger kids, they're going to fly under the radar. But look out, because I keep saying to Mateo, he thinks he's really working really hard to make the major leagues in baseball. We grew up in baseball. And I wish him all the best. But I'm going to tell you something. I think if he doesn't make the major leagues right away, he's just going to own a major league team. He's just geared that way. And I'm very proud of Mateo because he's just wired. He's intense. He's a great student, and just kind of like your son. They're gonna reach incredible greatness because of that. I really do.
I look at my situation with me and my brother as a good example. So I blazed the path, and I didn't mind doing it, and I never thought that my brother really paid a lot of attention. And the next thing I know, he grows to be 6'8" in one summer, and I'm like looking up at him. I'm thinking, am I standing in a hole or what's going on, right? And then you realize, oh my God. And then I was his inspiration, right? And he probably didn't want to admit it, but he did at my wedding. And
I was there.
But I was apparently the driving force because he saw me doing this. He never came up, never asked me for any advice, never asked me for anything. But he just watched and learned. He watched and learned. He watched and learned. My son, same way. Like, he doesn't ask me a whole lot of questions about hockey, but all of a sudden it's like, where did you learn how to skate so fast? Like, oh my God. I got coaches going, have you seen your son? Like, our best coaches can't keep up with this guy. Like, he is fast. And, but he does it in a sneaky, silent kind of way. But he's seen the success his sisters had, right? And he's just kind of said, okay, maybe I don't have to advertise what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, right? I'll be the Dr. Evil, right?
That's a good way to say it.
And come in from behind and become super successful.
And make $1 billion.
Well,
exactly. We can talk forever, but you got to promise me one thing. Anybody want to get in touch with Z to make their team exceptional? Click underneath. We'll get you to it. We're going to do this again. We do this
I'd love to.
But it was a great opportunity. I wanted to, in my little show here, my humble little abode here, I want to share some great stories and some great people that have helped me get through a lot of stuff professionally, personally, and like getting better, inspired. And I didn't want to kind of keep you in that bubble. Is like, hey Z, let's go talk about shit, right? Guys, meet Z. For those of you, the very rare people that don't know who Z and his accomplishments as a football player, as a human being, meet up with him. He'll make you better in a team and stuff like that. But I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, man.
I appreciate this. Like, my football career is long over. And so anybody that's willing to talk about, the glory days, let's call it, right? And it's always humbling and really, it's great to be remembered, right? As a former athlete. I remember one time I had somebody come up to me and goes, hey, didn't you used to be Srecko Zizakovic?
Used to be.
And I said, you know what's funny? I still am. Right? And then they catch themselves. But it tells you in the world of sports how people kind of pigeonhole you and go,
absolutely.
Well, no, you were done at the end of the 95 season. So you weren't that And I'm like, to a degree, you're right. I did change, right? But I'm still the same person, right?
Yeah.
But there was a change in my mentality. There was a change in my life. There was a change in lots of different things once that football career ended, right? So that person kind of went away, but he's been back. You know what I mean? And applying, life lessons from football and sports into business and into my life and into coaching and into, helping kids get better, right? And inspiring them to want to do the same, right? And that's, when I see guys like Joe Swift, Greg Almond, Brian Shuchuk, right? Like some of those kids from UFC that I just that I remember glommed on every one of my work. Like, we're just listening on, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? Right? oh, coach said, right? Like you sit there and now they come to you and you go like, oh man, these guys got families, they got kids, they got great
Businesses,
jobs,
yeah.
you know, and they still come to you and they give you a big hug and they tell you they love you, right? And you're like, man, I just had a 30-year-old come up to me and tell me he loves me because I cared about him, right? And I taught him some life lessons. Yeah, Joseph, right? Man, how do you not like that kid? You know, I Dennis Clark, late Dennis Clark. Like oh man, I wish that kid was around, right? Yeah. He had huge potential, right? And you love these kids, right? You become like a surrogate parent, right? So that's the part that I enjoy now. So it's a different success.
I have an idea. Next time we do this, either live or we're going to radio in Lubo. Because he's got a great, you know, your brother is kind of a smart, hell of a football player.
He's a
smart dude, and I think he can give me some dirt on you. So
hey, I'm not giving you his number then.
I got his number. So, anyways, see you guys next time. I'm here with ZMB. Great stuff. Talk to you guys later. Well, you know what? That's pretty much all the time we have for this episode today. Thank you for tuning in with us. And you know what? Make sure you subscribe to our MegaPixx media channel so you will never miss an episode. And also you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. We have content almost every day. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you guys soon.